Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Battle Chads. This one here being one of our nice Decktech episodes, and as you can see, it's brought a little bit differently. Instead of with Josh, I have one of our best and most amazing players of the Chad Magic team, Jack Goldsworthy.
I'll take that. But yeah, no, Josh clearly got better things to do, so I'll be stepping in for today, I guess.
And as you can see as well in the middle here, we have another very special face on the cast. The winner, or one of the winners, right, of the Modern RCQ for Axion Now's 10th year anniversary tournament, Sam Milner.
Yeah, that's me, Luis Jack. Thank you very much for having me on. I've watched Battle Chads for quite a while now, and it's a tough act to follow young Dingo, to be fair. He was last week's guest, so I'm going to give him a best shot.
He didn't come with any spicy tips and deck techs, though, so...
Yeah, very true. He just said play energy cards,
Yeah.
right? Win games.
Yeah, play good cards, win.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that we've brought you on as well is because you're playing probably the hottest new deck to have dropped in quite a while. It's a deck that kind of sort of existed for a while back when Grief was still running around and all these things were happening. But now it's taken a new form, a much more blue form. If any of you have guessed it, it is indeed Mono Blue Belcher.
Yeah, so Belcher's, it used to be mono red, right? And it tried to do things with Iron Crag feat to play a Belcher and activate it in the same turn. So we're carrying on the legacy of that idea, trying to utilize a card Goblin Char Belcher, but this time it's backed up by good magic cards rather than recross the paths and whatever else that deck played, to be honest.
So, I mean, obvious first point to start with is why are you turning up to a tournament with this then?
So, have you ever heard, I'm sure you have heard actually, the expression, bringing a gun to a knife fight? Well, Goblin Char Belcher is the equivalent of bringing a cannon to a knife fight. So, Goblin Char Belcher, if you've never seen the card before, it's a 4-mana artifact. It essentially reads, pay 3 mana, tap it, reveal cards from top of your library until you reveal a land card, and it deals that much damage to your opponent. If you reveal a mountain, it deals double that amount of damage. So, as you may have noticed, not playing a single land in quotation marks. Instead, this deck takes advantage of the MDFCs. So, realistically, when you activate a Goblin Char Belcher, you're dealing 40 to 50 damage to your opponent. So, that's the cannon. That's the 1-mana activation, annihilate your opponent. And then it's backed up by a flurry of essentially counter spells to protect that plan as well. So the reason to bring this to a Modern event at the moment is Modern's very stagnant. The One Ring is currently dominating challenges. Energy is absolutely everywhere. Frog Tide's doing really well. And Tron decks are sort of coming up at the back of the format. And what Belcher does, it just completely ignores what your opponent is doing. And it just tries to deal 40 to 50 damage in one go. Really effective way of playing Magic.
Yeah, can't argue.
And instead of bringing your One Ring as the 4-mana artifact, you have a Goblin Char Belcher. Well, another way to play around that card, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. Goblin Char Belcher is quite funny with the One Ring because they've got protection. I'll just do it in your upkeep instead. So it does get round that, which is really good. And to be honest, if you're playing Modern at the moment, I think you should be playing Energy, a One Ring deck, or a deck that's good against both of those two things combined. And I think that Belcher's the perfect choice. So it combines a number of things that we've seen in previous Modern. So it uses mana advancement like Lotus Bloom, but then it combines that with Tameshi Reality Architect. It's a mouthful to say, but essentially what Tameshi and Lotus Bloom do is if you got Lotus Bloom in play Tameshi, crack the Bloom for 3 mana, and then you use that mana to bounce a land, draw a card, and return the Bloom. So you generate a lot of mana very, very quickly because you do that to all of your lands in play. And it's introduced probably the most surprising card that's becoming a Modern staple, which is Philology Archaeologist. It sees a lot of play in Goryo's Vengeance. Getting cards together for this event, finding this card in stock anywhere was a massive pain. It's a common, everybody wants it, nowhere has it. And then the recently printed Thundertrap Trainer, which is also quite a mouthful, as sort of your copies 4 to 8 of Philology Archaeologist. So these two cards help you dig for your Belcher, your Lotus Blooms, your other interaction, and they also provide pretty good chump blockers while everything else is going on. And then the sort of things you want to find are your free counter spells. So these two pair amazingly well with Flare of Denial. It feels incredibly unreasonable, to be honest. What also feels unreasonable is playing 4 copies of Force of Will, aka Disrupt and Shoal, in your modern deck as well. If you've not seen this one before, you're not too far behind myself, but essentially, pitch a card that shares a mana value with it, and you get to counter a spell of that TMC on the stack. Pitch a blue card that shares a CMC with someone on the stack to counter it. Now, another utility of all of the different MDFCs we're playing is that they vary in mana cost. You can counter a 2-drop with something like Droid Disruption, or you can counter a Murktide Regent with something like Seagate Restoration. It's really, really strong to be able to choose and decide what you counter. We've got the regular free counter spells, which have been prominent for a very long time, like Pact of Negation as well, and quite a spicy one of Commandeer. We're going to get into the RCQ event in a little bit, I think, but I wasn't the only Belcher player in that event. I didn't get to live the dream. The other Belcher player did live the dream, where they commandeered the One Ring and won the game that way, which is just insane. But yeah, that's the deck really, and what ties it all together is Whir of Invention. So if you generate enough mana, you can go find your Lotus Bloom. Or sorry, if you generate no mana, you can find your Lotus Bloom. If you generate enough, you can find your Belcher for the win as well.
It's a very good rundown of the cards. Obviously, not every single card needs a complete rundown, as some of them are a lot less useful than others, aside from just it is a land that sometimes has a somewhat relevant front side, like Suppression Ray. How many times did you cast on the front side?
So Suppression Ray is the only one I never cast during the event. I did cast every other one at some point. They all kind of have the secret utility. So Hydroelectric Specimen, for example, can save a Tameshi, or more importantly, if you don't have a creature in play, you can flash it in the end step and then that's your Flare of Denial for when you go for the win. Suppression Ray has no text, and importantly, Suppression Ray, while it has no text, taps for white mana on the back. So if you don't have the Lotus Bloom to begin with, but it's in your graveyard, you can activate Tameshi off that 1 white and go on from there. So that's the worst one. It's, to be honest, it's the one that's pitched least to Disrupt and Shoal as well. 5 mana isn't a very common CMC in Modern at the moment, but you know, not all of your cards get to be insane. Sometimes you just have to play an Azorius Guildgate, and this does that job pretty well.
I'd be curious as well, because I know sometimes when you build a combo deck, it's one of those things of like 60 of those 60 slots are taken up because it's so strict in the build. How much like actual building room do you have in the main board, or is it fairly locked?
So the core is pretty locked down. You have to start at this point. I think Doomwake was the first person to win a challenge with Tameshi Belcher in this current iteration. Most of your main deck is locked down. But there are some flex slots in the main deck. So, for example, some of the MDFCs can be juggled around a bit. I know not every list plays Waterlog Teach-ins. Some people instead go for 4 Bane Veil just because of how prominent aggro is at the moment in your Zoo decks or your energy decks. So there is still a bit of wiggle room, but I would say 90 to 95% of the deck is locked down. And that's just because you don't get to do the whole cantrip thing. You don't get to play preordains, or at the minute best cards in Modern, the Surveil lands. You don't get to play those, so you kind of just have to play your archaeologists, play your trainers, and just go from there. But there's some build around room in here. As I mentioned, there was another Belcher player in the top seed. They entered as the top seed of the event, and I entered the second in the top 8 cut. We compared lists after the event, and they were actually quite a bit different, which was really cool to see.
That's interesting.
And we also noticed that your list doesn't have any of those alternative style of win cons that used to be a little more prevalent in the Belcher builds in the past. You used to have your Thassa's Oracles, your maybe a Jace or two, the ones that what's the one that's called?
Wielder of Mysteries?
I think so.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
it used to be an alternative win con for this kind of deck when your Belcher got answered. So what makes you not be so afraid of a timely surgical extraction or unmoored ego or those kind of lobotomy effects?
So in general, lobotomy effects are, I would say, currently quite bad in modern. Where you can surgical extraction of Flage, but you're gonna die to the 1-drop, 2-drops, and Goblin Bombardment. Well, especially the Ajani with the Goblin Bombardment, that's really good. The only deck that I'd say outside of Belcher extraction effects would be good against is you can do it against Frogtide if you like. You can try and surgical the eye in response to an unearth or something like that. But realistically, those decks can watch that happen and then kill you. And modern at the minute is all about card advantage, especially with the ring kicking around. So if I was to do that, for example, and I was to surgical extraction the Oculus, as a Frogtide player yourself, Luis, you go, right, that's cool. I'm going to cast this Murktide. I've already got 2 frogs in play, and I'm going to go to combat and win that way. And especially with cards like Amped Raptor, like the One Ring, like Malevolent Rumble, really starting to tick up in popularity, I do not want to get rid of a card just for the sake of maybe hitting my opponent. So, for one, they're not very popular at the moment. And for two, the absolute collection of counter spells means I'm not too scared of them. It's a threat I have to recognize and have to respect. So maybe in game 2, when I mill over a Goblin Charbelcher with Philology Archaeologist, I may have to take it in that instance so it doesn't get surgicaled. But the deck moved away from the 2 win conditions because they sometimes did not run parallel very well. If you drew the selective memory with the Charbelcher, but not the mana advancement, it's a bit clunky. You can just draw the opposite end to each combo. So if you really need a Goblin Charbelcher to win the game and you top deck your Fastest Oracle or Jace Rule of the Mysteries instead, that could probably be game losing clunkiness. You don't have time to stumble in current modern. You stumble against energy, you're probably losing that game. Stumble against Frog, you're probably losing that game. So this deck does one thing, but it does that thing really, really well and really efficiently and very consistently as well.
Absolutely. It's definitely a lot to take in with this deck, as you have to be very aware of what's being played, what's happening, and how people are going to answer you if you're going to use this deck effectively. Because
Yep.
you have free counterspells, sure, but they all come with a bit of an extra cost, especially in such a
Yep.
card advantage heavy meta that we're in.
Yeah.
2-for-1ing yourself is not really what you want to be doing, generally speaking, but this
Yep.
is what this deck does innately. It's what it's trying to do, and it has to use its tools really, really well to be able to get that win from nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. And most games I played used almost all of the cards in play and all the cards in my hand. You got to use every piece of the buffalo to get there, really. So the other reason, just to mention as well, why I think this deck is just such a good choice at the moment, is it wins game 1 a lot. Throughout the 7 rounds I played, I didn't lose a game 1. It's just doing its own thing, and it's completely ignoring your opponent unless it has to. I used to be a Storm player. Rest in peace, Ruby Storm. I absolutely loved that deck, but the issue that deck had, I think, in the end, was played against the opponent, played against Sideboard Hate, and it played against itself as well. So if you flip one too many lands from your Reckless Impulse or Rends Resolve, lights out essentially. As I said, you can't afford to stumble. But Belcher just does not stumble, really.
Be curious as well, because when I look at a deck like this, it looks like you're so dependent on that Belcher and those other sort of key cards. How does it mulligan? Because like other decks, obviously you've got so much more room to mulligan because maybe you've got 8 different 1-drops, 2-drops, whatever. With this, it's sort of Belcher or nothing. So what does the mulligans look like? What are your keeps? What are your throws?
That's a really good question. Before I played this in the RCQ, I brammed leagues for a week and a half straight. Just every night, get home, do a league, and I started the first league I've ever played with Belcher. And when I usually play a new deck, I try to keep those risky, weird hands, see what pays off. Did really bad in that league. You can't just keep every hand. Traditionally you can keep a hand of lands and spells. You're never going to get that in this deck. You're just going to get spells. So the deck and the hand is really, really strong, but when it's doing something, too many times I've seen, or myself have experienced, is this hand's full of counter spells, I'll be fine. As Luis touched upon, they're not the card counter spell. They usually have a second cost. So you can't just keep a hand of 2 Disruption Trolls, 2 Pact of Negations, 2 Land and a Belcher. That's not going to do anything. You need to be doing at least something proactively. Lotus Bloom's really good at being proactive because it puts a clock on your opponent because they're going to realistically try and win the game before that comes off suspend. But both the sets of 2 drops in the Archaeologist and the Trainer are just amazing cards. A perfect hand would have one of those in it. If a hand doesn't have one of those in it, realistically, you need something like a Tameshi or a Worth Invention or a Lotus Bloom to make sure that you're not just going to do absolutely nothing. It comes up as well that depending on matchup, you can really turn some of those MDFCs into real spells. So against Energy in particular, Baleen Veil is actually a really good spell to cast. And, if you're against Eldrazi, Commandeer becomes a really good spell to cast as well. So matchup dependent might steer you towards different keeps, but realistically, you want to be doing something, even though your deck is majority counter spells, no removal spells unless you want to count Sink and Stupor. You need to go and put the pressure on your opponent. So yeah, just something proactive.
Yeah, so would you say it is a one of those decks where sevens aren't all that common?
Yeah, it's really, really tricky to mulligan, but I would advise people, if they want to pick this up, to mulligan aggressively. If you're thinking about a hand, it probably isn't good enough. If you want to win most games in Modern, you have to mulligan to what your deck's trying to do. And as we've touched upon, this deck does only one thing. So you have to mulligan to a hand that can realistically do that thing. But on the flip side, a lot of your hands are really good. You just have to be careful of, like, most hands look like a poison apple. Oh, it's too good. It's too good to be true. And then you've done nothing and you've died to a Ragavan or 2 somewhere along the way.
I know we've talked a lot about the very heavy counterspell hands that I've seen many a new Belcher players keep, where they're like, oh yeah, I'm against, I play Murktide, so people know that I'm on that deck. They're like, oh yeah, I need counterspells against Murktide, stop that frog from resolving, I have the spell snare, I have this, I have that. And then suddenly they find themselves just trying to top deck for a win of some sort, when my top decks are generally better, or most decks are, because we have a little more synergy within our decks in terms of how our cards function, whereas yours is setting more of a small puzzle that you want to blow up almost instantly when you get a chance. You don't have that long game grind that most other decks have.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I will warn Belcher players about, if you come into the deck, you're new to the deck, you want to get into it, a lot of decks run a different variety of cards. Card advantage, removal spells, hand disruption. Belcher runs 3 types of cards. You run your counter spells, you run your creatures, and you run your Belcher or Belcher adjacent cards. So if you keep a hand of counter spells, you are very, very likely to draw a Belcher, a creature, or a counter spell if you want to, include your Lotuses and Whirs in that Belcher pile. So that's great. 90% of your deck is the counter spell pile. So if you keep a hand of 5 counter spells and some lands per se, you are very, very likely to draw into another counter spell. And I just don't think that's a game you can play currently.
Makes a lot of sense. Then that brings the question of the sideboard. How do you utilize the sideboard into this deck? It's a very hard skill, sideboarding, as we have an episode about that actually on the channel. If anyone wants to give a listen, it's very nice.
Quick little plug.
Might help you. But sideboarding in combo decks especially can be really hard because diluting your plan can completely mess you up. So how do you know how many cards to take out? Is there a hard and fast rule about it? Is there a lot more loose kind of touch and go? Or how does it actually feel when sideboarding with this deck?
Yeah, so I have to say, for a monocolored deck that is a combo deck, the sideboard is surprisingly strong. So just to quickly run through it, we have a variety of counter spells. I've never played with Consigned to Memory before. What a magic card. Absolutely insane. I'm in love. No need to say any more about that. It's fantastic. Force negation, really good against other combo decks, so your Belchers or what's becoming very popular Grinding Breach combo. Harbinger Disease, really good card again. I never cast this card before this event. Won me some games single-handedly. Into the Floodmore is your hate or hate answer because it answers anything. Into the Floodmore is absolutely insane. I'm not sure if anybody caught Eternal Weekend, but this card showed up in both Legacy and Vintage just to show the ceiling of this card. It looks really basic, but it's very, very good. Mystical Dispute as the counterspell to counterspells, or more importantly, a 1-mana counterspell Psychic Frog. Spell Snare, fantastic at the moment. Hits a lot of frog, hits a lot of energy, hits a lot in almost every deck, even in your Eldrazi games. It hits Malevolent Rumble, it hits the Talismans, great cards. And then Unable to Scream, what a lot of people are calling Blue Swords to Plowshares. I disagree. I think this card's better than Blue Swords to Plowshares. It's a hate piece that hits absolutely any creature, and there's some cool utility I'm sure we'll get into a little bit. Just got a little bragging story about how I use this card in the event, so I'll keep that close to my chest for now. But yeah, it's a weird one, and if you were to be maybe a new modern player to look at this, you look at the main deck and go, right, it's all counter spells, and then you look at the sideboard and go, right, it's all counter spells. So what happens here? Realistically, the main deck is set up, as I've said, to win game one very, very consistently. Game two, you need to change up your pace just a little bit. So, as a general rule of thumb for Belcher, if you're not playing against opposing counterspells, I think the Pact of Negations have to come out. They're there to answer something that can lose you the game in game one, or answer a counterspell for your Belcher in game one as well. But if you're against, I know I keep saying it. I'm sorry. It's the boogeyman of the format. If you're against Energy Sideboard and you draw Pact of Negation, feels absolutely awful. So unless you're against another blue deck, I'd take the Pact of Negations out. And to be honest, how I've been approaching the sideboard is Disrupt and Shoal is fantastic. Force of Will is fantastic. But we've already touched upon that you can't afford to stumble, and card advantage is everything currently. So in game two, when your opponent is now playing a deck that's a bit more streamlined and has a better chance of beating you, pitching any card to a Disrupt and Shoal feels bad. I want every card I can to be able to answer what my opponent's playing. So the way I've been approaching it is I've been taking out almost all of the Disrupting Shoals to bring in more relevant counter spells from the sideboard. So if you're against Frog, I would take out some Disrupting Shoals and play Spell Snare instead because it hits both Psychic Frog and Counterspell. If you're against Energy, I'd take out Disrupting Shoals and bring in Spell Snares instead because they hit both Ajani and Goblin Bombardment. But it's more about this is the best main deck build in an unknown room. Now the match is known, let's tweak the deck so the counter spells are a bit more efficient, essentially.
So it's more of a upgrade what you have in the main deck instead of completely change the card for another card.
For sure, because what your opponent is going to be doing is they're going to be upgrading their non-interactive main deck for things like Pith Needles, Disruptive Flutes, White Knight Orchid, I think that card's called, the White Orchid Phantom, the Strip Mine, because if they play that and blow up a land, you don't get to go get a second land. There's no basics here. So that's another thing with the sideboard. There are some very respectful Belcher players that play a Mountain in the sideboard, just in case they get Field of Ruins or the Phantom. I decided not to move forward with it. Essentially, I didn't think a paper room would be prepared for Belcher, and those type of effects wouldn't be around very, very much. And I was absolutely correct. Didn't see one all day. I spoke to my Energy opponent after the top 8, and they went, yeah, they're on the way here. I was going to play 4, but who was going to play Belcher? So he didn't pack them. But there are some... It's tricky because there are some really, really good sideboard options for Belcher. Untimely Malfunction is a really good one. Because when I activate my Belcher and target you, they go, no thanks, I'll target you instead. And it's also a shatter for your Bloom or whatever else. So the sideboard is something I think is solid as is, but as Modern becomes more prepared for Belcher, might have to change a bit in the future. essentially bring in that basic mountain. I know Sean Goddard's really good UK player. They played in the Mega Modern, and in there they made top 8 with Belcher. And in their tweet, they said the mountain was amazing all day. So it looks like in just a day, the room became much more prepared for the deck.
Yeah. I know that there was a lot more Undercity Informant or Informer, I think it's called, going
Oh
around.
yeah. Oh
I think your last opponent in the semifinals, you were against Blue Black Frog, and they showed you they had 2 in the deck. They never found it during the match, and that's definitely a card to be afraid of.
Oh yeah. I did play against that in the Swiss as well. Actually, I did see one copy, but there was no Cavern of Souls, so that I think it got Flare of Denial into oblivion. But yeah, that card's really scary. If people at home don't know what that card is, it's a 3 mana bear, I think, and usually it sees a lot of playing Oops All spells because you pay 1 mana, you target yourself, and you mill cards until you mill a land card, which obviously you don't play any of, and then you do Narc Amoeba combos from there to win the game. It's really good against Belcher because your opponent plays it and they target you, and they mill you out for essentially 4 mana. Really good card, and it's even better than a bear. It's a 2/3, so it blocks as well. Crazy.
It's quite a card. I know Will Hall had it in his sideboard as well, ready to go in case he faced Belcher. Pulling it on screen for everyone here to see.
I do think an interesting thing with what you were saying about the sideboarding though is the disrupting shoals coming out, because like Belcher at the moment has seen like the sharp rise. There is no like one game plan for how to fight Belcher, so you see so many decks playing so many different cards even within the same archetype to fight you. So I would have thought disrupting shoals flexibility would be very good into like a sort of an unsure field.
Yeah, and I think it is, but from my own play experience, Flare of Denial does the same thing. And what I really like from Flare of Denial is being able to hard cast it quite consistently. 3 mana is, as a cancel, you never want your Flare of Denial to be a cancel. If it has to be a cancel, then it's only 3 mana. Disrupting Shoal, I guess one thing I haven't touched upon, it absolutely sucks to hard cast. The double blue X. So if I wanted to cast a Undercity Inform with Disrupting Shoal, I'd have to have 5 mana available. With a Flare Denial, I'd only have to have that 3. So the Disrupting Shoal has been coming out because of the ability or the lack of ability to hardcast them. Whereas Flare Denial, even if it's against an untimely malfunction, a cancel's a cancel. And if you're doing Lotus Bloom Tameshi things, 3 mana is actually a really relevant number for Lotus Bloom as well.
Oh, fair enough. Interesting.
I think it's a very good thing to notice because Disrupting Shoal, like you were saying, is more flexible, and I think that's exactly why it's best in the main board. It's flexible when you're against an unknown opponent. You know, you don't know what you're fighting against when you play a league on MTGO. You don't know what your round 1 opponent is when you go to a tournament, unless it's an open decklist tournament. And that's where Disrupting Shoal shines. You can answer whatever is coming around the corner, and hopefully it's good enough in that way. Whereas after the fact, well, you know what your opponent's on. You know what they're going to have. So you take out this somewhat clunky and 2-for-1 card for the direct answer to what you need instead.
Yeah, exactly. And my opponents or opponents in general must be like, oh my god, there's Force Will in Modern. What they don't see is the 3 other copies stranded in hand that haven't been able to pitch all game. So there's also a very weird dichotomy with Disrupting Shoal as well, especially against popular decks in the format. Energy, for example, let's say I was to keep it in against Energy, I'm missing one very important CMC in the main deck, which is 1. There is no 1-drop in the main deck. So Ragavan is really, really good against what I'm doing. Guide of Souls, oh, what a card, is really frustratingly good against what I'm doing. So if I'm to bring in these 1-drops like Spell Snare or Enable Screen from the sideboard for those matchups, then it becomes a weird tension between Disrupting Shoal and countering a 1-drop. So I'd have to pitch a sideboard card to counter a 1-drop. And realistically, if I'm doing that, then I shouldn't be playing a sideboard card because it's not better than that. So Disrupting Shoal has always been my go-to cut because, again, it's rubbish to hardcast, and in games 2 and 3, you want to be casting more consistent things. But also, again, because, that 1-drop thing really comes up as well.
And something I wanted to mention as well, Sam has been very kind, and he has provided us with a sideboard guide for the Mono Blue Belcher deck here. He's going to have all kinds of matches on there, I think you said you were going to maybe make some changes to what you thought if there was anything else to add. Because I don't think we have everything on there, especially after what's been revealed this last tournament to be more prominent decks. Something like the new black-green rock / value pile deck.
Yeah,
not an easy deck to beat.
Yeah, don't sideboard for that one. Just go get your lunch early. That's what I'd recommend. It's really, really tough. Yeah, just scoop. It's easy.
Speaking of scooping, what are those matchups that make you just think, yeah, I'm out, I'm over. I don't want to play against this.
I've played a lot of games with Belcher at this point. As I said, I've crammed like a league a night for a week and a half straight. Two decks come to mind that just make me want to tear my hair out. Mill is really funny because they just mill you to Belcher and surgical you. I used to play Tormod's Crypt in the sideboard, and one time I played against Mill, I was like, right, I'm going to bring in a Tormod's Crypt so I can exile my own graveyard in response to a surgical, because you can whir for it, and fantastic. What a game plan. The dream scenario lined up. They went to surgical my Belcher. I went, no, 3 mana whir, go get a Tormod's Crypt, exile my graveyard, and it went fantastic. Surgical extraction, your Belcher. So Mill's rubbish. Really, really tough because they can keep pretty bad hands if it's like Mill Effect, Surgical Extraction. Like crabs, they get to play 8 crabs now, and geez, it's tough. And then the black green Agatha Soul Cauldron deck is also really tough. We hit upon how strong Undercity Scavenger is. They also play Haywire Might's main, which has a really annoying interaction with Lotus Bloom because of Suspend. Lotus Bloom comes into play in your upkeep. They get to exile it before you move to your main phase. Really frustrating interaction. And what's more frustrating is with Soul Cauldron, they can do that with every creature. And with Undercity Informer, that is an activated ability. So with a Soul Cauldron in play, they can turn every single creature into an instant kill. That deck's really, really tough. But other than those two, I think it's pretty decent against most things.
I don't know how the rock deck is equipped with this, but how do you fare against hand hate, like your Thought Seizers, your Duresses, all that side of things? Because all of your lands are Thought Seizable.
Yeah. So Mardu Energy is really popular at the minute, and they've recently picked up Dreams of Steel and Oil as like extra copies of Forties. It sucks. Doesn't feel great. Obviously, Forties in the combo deck is a really good strategy, and especially as Jack pointed out, if you can Forties a land, that would feel amazing, right? If that's a pivotal land that they have to have. I've not had too much trouble with it. The deck draws really, really well. As we've already touched upon, there's like 3 types of cards in the deck. So you're pretty consistent at seeing those cards. So if you need a land, there's a good chance you hit a land because you play so many, even if 1 or 2 will be used as spells. I've not struggled with it personally. I've played against Mardu Energy a couple of times and currently like 2-0 against that matchup. But if it becomes a real problem, I don't see why the deck can't just play for Leyline of Sanctity, the white one that gives you hexproof. There's also a cool tech. There was a new card in Foundations that gives you Shroud. It's a 1/04 wall for 1 and a white, but it's an artifact, I believe, so you can Tameshi it back into play if you need to. So that might be relevant as well. But yeah, you can work for it as well. So hand hate is good against me and good against the deck in general, but there's not too much of it, even when the decks are playing it. And at some point as well, they can't tease the top card of your library. So combo wise,
that old game.
Yeah, Mill can, but Mardu Energy certainly can't. So
shout out to Christian, who's probably salivating about you talking about Crystal Barricade. He's been saying, "Oh, this card's great. This card's fantastic. Best card."
Yeah, he's got my PayPal.
Don't make any card. Oh God, don't make any card he thinks is good be talked about, please.
No, we can cut this out. It's fine. I'll move on to something else.
That man has enough ego.
I mean, we've briefly touched upon it a couple of times. Probably worth actually having a bit more of a discussion because energy is the boogeyman in the format. What does this matchup look like?
So, energy, I would say, is a good matchup, but, and that comes with a bit of a caveat, Energy is the best aggro deck I've ever seen in any format. The deck is so good. So when I say it's a good matchup, it's probably 60-40 or maybe even 55-45. Energy is really strong. So obviously you should never play a deck in a modern event if you think you have a bad energy matchup, because you are probably going to see it, especially in Swiss rounds. But I think Belcher's a good choice. Essentially, they find it really tough to interact with you in game one, but they're really aggressive draws, and Galvanic Discharge and the right Thunder Trap Trainer or the right Archaeologist can be really pivotal. So in game one, it's an absolute race. There are some cool lines you can take against Energy in game one. Firstly, for large Archaeologist, you don't have to take a card, so you can just turn it into a 1/4. Pretty big blocker. I did that against a zoo opponent, and he went, "You can't do that." And I was like, "I'm pretty sure I can." And then he read it, he was like, "This card's insane. It's a 1/4." But yeah, you're never forced to take anything with Large Archaeologist. So if you need a 1/4 to buy you time, that's a really relevant stat line. Bane Veil as well, if we can pull that one up. That's got some relevant text. So if the start is the Guide of Souls Ocelot Pride start, where they start to make cats and cats and cats and cats, that spread is that damage is over a spread of a variety of creatures, where Bane Veil comes in handy. So you can just fog them for a turn or two. As well, you can find that with your trainer or your Philology Archaeologist, you can aggressively dig for the Veil. So Energy traditionally has a tough time interacting with combo game one. So those little tricks, maybe compared with a fast start, should be enough to get you there. They're also forced to hit your early creatures like the Archaeologist and the Trainer, just to make way for the attackers, especially if you make a 1/4 or something like that. That pretty much opens the room for Tameshi as well. So your Tameshi combo is actually quite consistent game one, because if they want to attack and win, they usually have to remove your early creatures. Good energy player may use Static Prison early, but that can be risky if you run out of energy and you give me another ETB effect. But Tameshi is pretty good as well, because they have to use their removal quite aggressively. When we come to sideboarding, this is the main reason why I'm actually playing Into the Flood more. A lot of energy decks, Belcher decks, tech for one portable hole in the sideboard. It's something that can hit anything, but you can wear off it as well. So I guess you're playing 5 copies. I really like Into the Flood more, especially how energy is, because it can make one finger a flyer with Guard or Souls, whatever, and it can kind of go in on one creature a little bit. This card answers hate and can bounce a creature at a pivotal moment, or bounce on a Johnny in response to a death trigger. So this, I think, helped a lot in my matchup, and it did come up one of the times I played against energy in the event. Just let's slow the game down, bounce your creature, has to come back in, and then they're playing the game on my terms. And I think that's what the matchup is essentially about, forcing the energy deck to play on Belcher's terms rather than me having to play on their terms. I can't play on energy's terms. It's too good. It's too aggressive. So
Yeah, it's interesting to hear those card breakdowns, and obviously we'd all expect energy to be a lot of a room. So to only be bringing 2 of the Veils, I think, is an interesting one if it's such a strong card, right?
yeah, and again, I've got another cool story I'll go through, and I go through the event, but Bane Veil is very relevant and did come up. I was speaking with a Belcher player on Friday, and they were saying to me, "Oh, need to play Bane Veils," because they were playing the red blue land instead. You know, the one that can.
Yep.
Yeah, I forgot its name, but I don't think the deck should ever progress with that land again. But the big reason I'm not playing 4 Bane Veils is the 2 Waterlog teachings instead. So, as I mentioned, the only land you don't want to cast is Suppression Ray. So, what Waterlogged Teachings does, is when you have all of your mana off your Tameshi Bloom, this can go find you a Whir of Invention, because sometimes the deck, as we've already touched upon, doesn't cantrip very well. You kind of have to take those natural draws and really utilize the 2-drop creatures when you can. So Waterlog Teachings lets you do something with all of that mana, and sometimes getting a Whir of Invention is really important. As an instant as well, you can 4 mana say go, then in their end step, cast this, get the Word of Invention, untap, then get the Belcher. I think as good as Bane Veil is, winning the game is also pretty good. So I like the utility of being able to do something with all that mana. Tameshi generates a lot of mana. Every time I did it, I was like, wow, it almost feels Legacy Light and you're abusing Lion's Eye Diamond in some way. But I think waterlog teachings is very, very important for the deck.
So just
So it's
before
just coming
then,
back to that proactive side of things you were saying at the start.
Yeah, exactly. You have to win the game, and yeah, if I have to do it in a clunky cast a 4 mana spell that was all right and limited, I guess, and then use that to get my win condition and then cast my win condition, that's what I've got to do. And I've beaten up on Storm a little bit. An old flame has died out there, but at least that deck really saw most of its deck when I got going. That's not a luxury Belcher has.
so here's a question for you then.
Mm-hmm.
If has it ever been thought, or probably has been at some point, is it worth playing maybe the 2 extra Bane Veil over the 2 Jawari Disruption? How often is Jawari Disruption coming up?
Jawari Disruption is really relevant. I think it's probably the one you cast the most outside of it being a land. So importantly, if you're on the play, this counters a frog. You play your tap land, they play their tap land, you play your shock land, and if they walk into that trap, you bite it. Force Spike, if you've ever played Cube, is like really strong. And one thing I really like about Jawari Disruption is sometimes you're in this Tameshi, Lotus Bloom, and maybe you want that one extra counter spell. So you've generated all your mana. You can bounce the Jawari Disruptions you played early on back to your hand with all this extra mana. They can be real counter spells if it comes down to that counter spell war as well. So I love the ability to force spike something, but Tameshi bouncing it back to hand and actually having that as a okay, I've got 2 packs and a flare, but if they have 3 force negations, what do I do? That can come up as well. And to be honest, it's pretty good in the mirror because it can be play draw dependent. It's not about countering Belcher, it's about the first player to activate Belcher. So this can really come up there as well for Word of Inventions and stuff. But no, Jawari Disruption is easily the one you cast most outside of it being a land. And as good as Bane Veil is, I do think it's a good matchup. If I was to play 0 copies of that card, I think I could still win a good amount of games against Energy, which is why the split.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. So now that we've gotten quite a nice and in-depth rundown of the
Sorry,
Belcher
you
deck.
invited me to talk about Belcher, and I have spoken.
Hey, no, it's been great. I'm sure a lot of people are really loving this. They're taking in all the information. But now let's go into a little bit more of the tournament breakdown, because you are the winner, or one of the 2 winners, right, of the RCQ Modern RCQ from Axion Now's 10th anniversary tournament. Mouthful there for you guys.
Yeah. What one
How
event
was
to
the
win?
tournament? How did it go?
You guys know me outside of this. We've played plenty of games. I'm not a boastful sort. It went well. It went really well. I felt a step ahead of the room at every turn, honestly. Now, the deck certainly carried me. Don't get me wrong, the deck was a great choice coming into the weekend. And as we've already said, it did well in the other modern events that were there too. So it wasn't just I got lucky. It was a great event, great choice coming into the weekend. The deck carried me, but when it mattered, I also knew the lines because I'd put so much testing in for this. As I said, my first league was like 2-3 or 1-4, and I was like, oh, maybe this was a poor choice. But if I could give any advice to anyone for any event, if you're playing a deck, make sure you know the little lines that could go with that deck. But no, the event went really, really well. I kind of won the matchup lottery a little bit. I got good matchups throughout the day, some of which I didn't expect, but turned out to be good ones. And I had at least 3 opponents go, didn't think Belcher would be in paper yet. So it had that surprise factor, which, to be honest, I didn't think it had. I thought it would have been quite a known quantity by this point. But no, it caught some people out. you want me to go through the rounds a little bit and see?
Yeah. Go through each
Let's
round.
hear it.
Yeah.
And let us know who you played against, and then let us know the stories you can share with
Oh,
us.
these stories are going to be such a letdown when I built them up for the past however long. But round one was against Jeskai Control. I felt nervous coming into the event. I'd never played this deck in paper before. One warning I will give to players: this deck is awkward to play in paper. MDFCs are cool. When half your deck is MDFCs, really frustrating. I had bright yellow sleeves as well, and so I had to get smoke inners so that they, couldn't be seen through the back. So I was playing these MDFCs with smoke inners, which was, I don't know why I chose to do that. What a poor decision. But yeah, so after I won game one of round one, I was like, all the dust come off. I felt I can, let's go. We can do this. And I just went to have a good time, and my round one opponent was absolutely lovely. But Jeskai Control, nothing to say about game one. Game two, they mulliganed to 5, and I was like, yeah, this is a good hand. They just played 2 on Tamiyo, and I was like, can't beat that. They boarded in some Tamiyos, and that Tamiyo ended up ultimating. There was a big counter fight over a surgical extraction, and then I was like, I was kind of going to see if I could get there, but we were getting close to time, so I decided to go to game 3. The really cool point I want to hit upon for all Magic players really is we've touched upon how strong Consign to Memory is. It come up twice in this event that my opponent kept a land light hand to have more than one Consign to Memory in hand. One thing I'll say is if you are not replicating Consign to Memory, it's no better than a negate. So what I mean is when we were playing this game, they kept a 2-lander, didn't see third land. I did my thing, and we fought over the Belcher. They consigned twice, and that's not nearly as strong as one consigned to memory being replicated twice. So it's got 3 copies. So that's a hint to everyone, I guess, that the first consigned to memory is better with lands and just having 2 consigned to memories act as like little force spikes. But yeah, that it was like a Flare of Denial, Pact of Negation, consigned to memory, Force Negation was in there, and I think there was another Flare of Denial as well. It was insane. But yeah, I won that one. What's really funny as well is when you kill them in game 1 and they go to concede and like, no, do you want to see my library? And they go, oh yeah, okay, cool, because they get to do that. Round 2 was probably the scariest match of the day. It was against the Black-Green Soul Trader combo. He uses Warren Soul Trader and Gravecrawler to go off. They started Cavern of Souls named Zombie play Gravecrawler. I thought I was pretty cooked at that point. That's a really scary start. But I was able to get there because Marionette Apprentice, I think, is the card they used to win now. That's a human.
Yep.
Human Artificer, something like that. So I was able to counter at the pivotal moment, untap and win. Game 2, they just got the combo. What I liked is that Instant Flood More is really good in that matchup. I might not be able to counter all these spells, but I can certainly interact. So it was a free piece of interaction there. I bounced Warren Soul Trader, didn't hit the untapped land to win, and then they untapped and killed me. And then in game 3, they had a pretty clunky hand, but had the Undercity Informer and just went cast Undercity Informer, go to kill you. I had the counter spell and then was able to untap and win.
Nice.
Round 3, yeah, it felt really good. Round 3 was against Zoo that was playing Orcish Bowmasters. Orcish Bowmasters isn't fantastic against me. It can trigger off Tameshi, but as we've already touched upon a couple of times, there's no real cantrip in here, so felt okay. I was able to take game 1. In game 2, really cool interaction. They had the Territorial Carvu, the 2-mana 5/5. Importantly, a 2-mana 5/5 can attack and draw and discard, or exile a card from a graveyard. So can't have that. 5/5 can't ever beat a 5/5. I'll Unable to Scream, and they wear and tear the Unable to Scream. I had a Tameshi in play. they untap, attack me, decide to loot, and I untap with Tameshi. And if you can pull up Tameshi for me there, sorry, Luis.
Yeah.
Tameshi has some hidden text there. It returns an artifact or enchantment.
Unable to scream comes straight back.
Yep. The Unable to Scream.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, it
Amazing.
genuinely, they attacked, and if they exiled the Unable to Scream, I probably lost that game. Really cool line. Brought it back, re-equipped. I was able to have the counter spells for their burn spells and other interaction, and took a really long game. Important to note in the Zoo matchup, at the end of, I know some of them play Stubborn Denial main just as a 1-mana negate, or 1-mana. No, negate's right, isn't it?
Yep,
It's non-creature. So I had 3 mana open. They attacked. I'm not in the attack. I'm not doing anything. I've got the kill next turn. They've got 1 card in hand. I flashed in the Hydroelectric Specimen because I had Flare of Denial just as backup for that combo. And they were like, yeah, that resolves. What does that do? It's like nothing. The 1/4. But no, that was relevant too. So yeah, really good showing for Unable to Scream in that game. Would have lost that game if they had just eaten it instead. But no, they didn't read Tameshi, and I did read Tameshi, to be fair. So that was
as we found out, reading's a very important skill. Unfortunately, I don't have Josh here to make fun of him today. Jack, can you read?
I'm dyslexic, so God knows.
Oh, nice, another one.
Yeah, that's. Whoa, I'm racking them up. No, but really cool line with Tameshi there. I felt I was like, yeah, that was pretty sick after that game. But no, I also had them on Consigned Memory because they hadn't played a creature and they hadn't killed me with a burn spell, so it had to be some form of interaction. So I went the long way round with the waterlogged teachings in game 2 to get the word to put the Belcher into play, and they had exactly Consigned Memory there too. So paid off for some due diligence and not rushing. Round 4, I was against one of your ones, Jack. I think I was against Domain Rhinos.
Ooh, should be a dead deck.
Yeah, and he went. I got deck checked. Luckily, those smoke in a sleeve come in clutch, and I didn't get a game loss for see-through sleeves. But he was talking to me throughout and he went, "I know what you're on. This matchup's terrible," and it didn't feel great. It was a very quick 2-0. Not much to say there. But he was from Birmingham, and when I was doing stuff, he kept like throwing insults, like, in a friendly way. And he went, "If you've never played Magic in Birmingham before, this is what it's like. So I guess I'm never playing Magic in Birmingham again." But no, he was a really nice guy. I really enjoyed my games with him, and he had a triple sleeve deck, so it was like a commander deck.
Oh God, one of those. It's like Aaron.
Oh
Aaron
yeah,
quadruple.
Sign of a player who just can't let go.
Yeah, like yeah, but yeah, and he was playing Rhinos as well, to be fair. So couldn't let go of the deck, couldn't let go of the sleeves. But no, he's a really, really nice guy. Round 5, I played against Boros Energy for the first time. I think it was my most important matchup of the day, or one of them. Being 4-0 feels great, because if you win the next one, you get to double ID into top 8. Fantastic feeling. Energy is like the one deck that can really steal that away from you and put you into the 4-1 bracket. She played against somebody I went to the event with, Thomas Duffy, earlier in the event, and she played slow and precise and well. Not like too slow, but she didn't just attack or swing out. She was very, very calculated in her plays. It was scary to play against. I think game 1, I just kind of got there. As I said, they find it tough to interact with you. She bought Gigantha at one point and had an Arena of Glory in play. So I just took my time, because if that's the plan and they haste it, I have the counter spell and then I'm free to go for the combo. Don't get punished by Static Prison. So I took my time a little bit there, and it paid off, and that's exactly what happened.
Jack,
Game
known as
2.
Gigantha hater over here.
Oh,
Me too.
If we get on talking about bans, I want Gigantha gone, but that's an argument for another day, I think. Game 2, really, really cool game. My opening hand is like double land, 2 Lotus Blooms, Goblin Charbelcher, and then 2 drops of Dig for spells and something else. So this is the game where right, I've really got this combo set up now. I need to buy time. And I purposely found the Bane Veils with those 2-drop creatures. And because they had a really, really aggressive Guide of Souls Ocelot Pride start as well. And with the Bane Veils, they just brought me so much time. It was just fog. Turn your 20 damage into 2 because there were 2 flyers, so they go from 3 X's into 1 X's. Felt amazing. Really, really weird game because they had the Guide of Souls double Ocelot Pride thing going on. They hit the City's Blessing super quickly. I belchered them. They were at 41. They asked me to count my library. I had 49, so I was genuinely one turn away from not being able to kill someone. So yeah,
That's crazy.
That was crazy. But beating Energy 2-0 felt really good. There was really interesting line. I quite like Force of Negation against Energy because the Static Prisons are really good and Goblin Bombardment's really good. Those cards can just steal games. And I remember tanking on a decision between Force of Negation and Bane Veil. And I decided that the Bane Veil was the play to win with what was currently going on, and that paid off. So sat 5-0, felt fantastic. Met the other Belcher player in round 6. We ID'd. And then the plan was to play the final round because then if I'm paired against the other Belcher player in the top 8, I should be on the play. But it was a good friend of mine and my driver to the event, Lucas, Battle Chad himself. So I decided to be kind and wouldn't ruin his dreams. Up to that point, Lucas's only loss in the event was to the other Belcher player too. And Lucas was packing 3 main deck consigned to memory that day. And
Yes.
So he felt okay about Belcher and then played against Belcher, and I was like, oh, maybe it isn't fantastic. But I did in top 8. Really pretty strange top 8. I think there were 3 copies of Storm in different varieties. I would have been fuming if I lost the Storm, to be honest. Absolutely fuming. But there were 3 copies of Storm, I think, 2 Belcher, a Demir Frog, a Control.
4-color, yeah, Lucas.
4-color. And
was the Control Jeskai?
Yeah, it was Jeskai Control. So I think it was 2 Storm, 2 Belcher, Control, Red White Energy, 4-color. Oh, so maybe it was 3 Storm. Some amalgamation of that, I guess. So
combo heavy just sounds like the energy decks have been bullied out of the room there. No one's been keeping the combos in check.
Yeah, for sure. And I joked with somebody I was going to the event with. We were discussing about what I should play, and I was going to be on Belcher, and I'm going to give it a good shot. And they went, yeah, because Storm's not good at the minute. And it's like, right, so I should play Storm then, because nobody's respecting it. The minute nobody respects Storm, it crops up, it does well. And I did put money on Storm being present. What surprised me is going up and down the tables, there was a lot of control. That was surprising, didn't expect that. But we are in the UK. People love control decks in the UK. And to be fair, like they, if it works, it works. People have different play styles and like different strategies. I can't criticize anyone. My land
was very interesting,
my deck.
though.
Mm-hmm.
It was control with 4 Tameshi. It was Jeskai control style, but instead of playing the energy package of the Wrath of the Skies, I think there was only one person in the Invitational that had that, which was the co-host actually I had for the stream, Lucy. Most of everyone else, when they were in Jeskai control, wasn't on the scam package. It was this Tameshi proper style control, Supreme Verdict, Counterspell deck. So it's quite a bit different than the usual we've been seeing.
Wow, that's really, really interesting. I take back everything I just said about control, and that sounds like a really cool list. I didn't get a chance to speak to the control player, but they top 8 and did well. So repeat of round 5, I'm against Energy. For those who didn't play when they're at the weekend, in the quarterfinals, there were 4 invites up for grabs. So you had to win your quarters, and you qualified for Bologna.
Bologna, yeah.
I'm probably
RC over there.
Yeah. So
standard. Woo!
I've never qualified for an RC before. And at this point, I was like, this is getting a bit real now. I have a chance to do something I've never done before with a strategy I've put a lot of time and effort into. This is what it's about, right? Prepare, win, qualify.
And you played a lot of standard as well, right?
I played good amount of standard back 10 years ago, I think. I've never really, but my first standard format was Dragons of Tarkir, which just had the fetch lands in it anyway, so I just stayed with the fetch lands, I
That's
guess.
funny you say that. The next Tarkir set is probably going to be the standard set that's going to be released when you go to Bologna as well. Look at that.
Yeah, that genuinely Tarkir is. If I could go back to any plane, it'd be Tarkir. But that's a little selfish of me. I know it's not too interesting, but big stompy dragons don't have to be, I guess, in the grand scheme of things.
I mean, the other funny thing here is you and me are now in the special club in our circle of both of us qualified for the standard RCs. I did it last year. You've done it this year now, playing modern.
Yeah,
I'll have you know,
yeah.
I'm part of that club. The very first RC I qualified to, Naples, was a standard RC, and I played modern to qualify for it.
There we go.
Let's go.
I was speaking to Francois at the event, and he made a really, really good point that if I qualify now, I only get to play standard when it's relevant. Because if I was to play the next standard season and the standard season before that, standard's going to change twice before that RC. And I was like, right, so I really need to win then because I don't want to go through two different standard seasons. But I like standards, to be fair. It looks pretty cool at the minute.
Very fun.
Yeah, there's a diverse amount of strategies, and what is the best deck, I guess, with the green-black demon deck at the minute. People are adapting to that really well, and that's a sign of a super healthy format. So I'm actually looking forward to play. Maybe they'll print Belcher and I'll be off to the races, but probably not. But quarterfinals, I'm against Energy. Again, I think Energy's a good matchup for me, but it's Energy, so it's like 55-45. But I entered as a second seed, so I take the play. Game one, I take game one. Game two, I'm not sure if it was a misplay looking back on it, but I had a good hand, and they go turn one Guide of Souls, and I immediately take 3 life to Unable to Scream. In the grand scheme of the game, that Guide of Souls can deal upwards of 10 damage if I let it run rampant. I think it was correct to do, but then they untap and they go Guide of Souls, Ocelot Pride, and I lose control of the game from that point. It stumbles away from me. They played really, really well. They had nothing else to do, and I was getting smacked for quite a bit of damage, so they just dashed Ragavan, but didn't attack into my creatures. They just dashed it for the energy, took it back. I was impressed that their play was really, really good. Because the first one, okay, that's great. Oh, no, it isn't. They were a step ahead of me there. They played really well. Game 3, keep a really, really good opening hand. Now, at this point, I've got people watching. I've got a judge sat next to me. And I'm not sure if I should say this, but I make quite a bad misplay. I say land go and forget to suspend the bloom in my hand.
Oh, no.
Okay. Shake it off. It's a mistake. We can win this game. Untap. Suspend the bloom. Let's go from there. Didn't let it falter me. I didn't like lose control of reality or my grip on reality, whatever else. But what's insane is I think if I would have suspended the bloom on turn 1, I would have lost that game. Because it got to a point where they had done their stuff, and the turn before I had drawn a Flare of Denial. I've got the Tameshi and I've got the Belcher in hand. All I need is the untap land, and I get to cast this bloom, which if I draw the land, I can go crack the bloom for white, untap land, play it for blue, Tameshi with 1 white open, kill you. And as I go to do it, they go, in your upkeep, Orims chant you. Okay. But I have the Flare of Denial. So I Flare of Denial the Orims chant, draw the untapped land, because sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and I win the game from there, right? If they would have had that Orims chant the turn before, I wouldn't have had the counter spell, and the bloom would have been lost forever in exile.
How funny.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the game would have been just over from that point, because obviously I still would have drawn the untapped land and I had the Belcher, but it definitely would have taken a different turn at the end there. And I say that to my opponent. I'm not sure if that's like, at that point, I just realized that I had qualified for my first RC. My opponent was a really nice guy. He was also called Sam, so I took down the last remaining Sam in the top 8. But no, he found it really funny. He was like, yeah, it's pretty good. You guys, it's a big brain move. I wouldn't recommend it, but it just so happened to exactly work for me. If we can cut that out as well, Luis, let's not put that in. I've changed my mind.
Yeah. The standard gods have smiled upon you for that one.
Now, nothing too exciting in the semis. I'm against Frogtide. Now, up until this event, I had a good record with Frogtide on Modo, like maybe like 6-2, 8-2, something like that. Like a pretty good record, right? Couldn't beat Josh or Luis in testing. Couldn't do it. So I was like, maybe I'm not playing against the best Frogtide players, etc., etc. But I had learned what I needed to do. And in game 1, I'm not sure the hand my opponent kept, but I played Word of Invention, and they went, yeah, that has to resolve, or something along those lines, signaling to me they didn't have any counterspell. So I got the Bloom, already had the Belcher, and I drew the Commandeer, I think, which can kind of act as a counterspell. If they counter your Belcher, you can pitch 2 cards, then redirect the counterspell to the Commandeer. Pretty awkward. It does work, I promise. But even if they had something and they were just trying to bluff me, I had the answer and it just resolved and I won. Game 2 sucked because they surveilled. I cut their deck and they put an Oculus into the bin. So they cast a 0 mana Entomb. Pretty good. I lost that game, to be fair. I think they top decked the Unearth as well, which, hey, I've had some good top decks.
Better lucky than good, eh?
Yeah, exactly. I think I did suspend my lowest Bloom on turn 1 in that game, so I maybe that was a mistake. But game 3, the thing I mentioned about Jeskai Control came up again. They kept a hand of double Consign, but it was Landlight. So again, it really wasn't this, because I guess you go, Consign is good against Belcher. I'm going to keep these copies of Consign rather than Mulligan for a hand that has 1 Consign and 3 lands or something. And that come up again. Big counter war again. My opponent chose to fight over the Bloom, which was really, really smart. Because if I lose that fight, I committed 2 Pact of Negations to that counter war. So it was this or nothing. And they had the Force. And luckily I had the Flare of Denial. And yeah, I won my way into the finals.
Which step did he fight it on, out of curiosity?
I think they fought it on cast.
On cast. That's the wrong way to fight it.
If you want to beat Belcher out there, I'm not sure if I should be saying this, or I might be kicked out of the Belcher Discord, but if you got consigned memories, you can actually, once the final counter comes off, suspend triggers to let you cast that spell. You can consign that trigger so it stays in exile forever, which is really, really good against if I had exactly Tameshi. So no, I got there. Yeah, you've done it to me a lot, but I got there. I was lucky enough to get there. And against you guys in particular, I learned that sometimes you just gotta. Yeah, I've got 3 counter spells. You have 4. I will lose the game on that metric.
Yeah.
But no, we got there, and there was no point to play the finals because first and second got exactly the same prize. It was Storm, so I would have been salty if I lost, even if there was nothing on the line. But my opponent was playing Jeskai Storm.
Ooh.
4 copies of Consigned to Memory, 4 copies of Silence in the sideboard.
Oh wow, that would have been a little tough, I think.
Yeah, I'm happy to say I entered as 2nd seed and they entered as 8th seed, so I did in fact win the event. But maybe they would have got me. And to be fair, they were a lovely, lovely person. They were putting together this project where they were getting, if you win an RC, you get like a little cool sleeve.
Right.
It's like a secret lair sleeve, and they were putting together a project where they were trying to get a selfie of every single RC winner this year, so they can make it into a playmat with that sleeve. And so now my face has been added to the other faces. When I say it like that, it's a bit serial killer-esque, but I'm sure it has good intentions. But no, shout out to him. He was absolutely lovely, and yeah, it was a great event.
Well, big congratulations to you, Sam. It's a great tournament rundown, a great deck tech, and I hope that we still have many of you at this point. I know it's quite a long episode compared to the usual deck techs, but I hope you enjoyed it. It's been really in-depth. It's been very, very to the point of everything you want to know about Belcher. especially with that sideboard guide that Sam has included for us. It will be in the description of the show for anyone that is interested and wants to peruse what you might be doing against other matchups with this here deck. Jack, you got anything to add? Any questions? Any more spectacular?
No, I think it's
insights?
been covered by Sam's ramblings. I think we're good.
Yeah, you guys have asked me to ramble, and I've certainly rambled. I'm gonna stop rambling.
I brought in a professional yapper, and I got yapping, so it's exactly what I wanted. It's exactly what I wanted.
Just play it 2 times speed, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, maybe 4 times speed, to be honest, because
like
I didn't mention this one thing. No, I'm joking.
No. Like the good old Reed Duke episodes or
yeah,
watch. Love Reed Duke, but yeah, gotta speed him up a bit sometimes.
Well, thanks very much for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it, and thanks for letting me, as you said, yap. The deck is really, really cool, and I think it might be a good choice into, hopefully, a ring-free modern.
Absolutely. It is a fantastic deck. It will definitely have some twists and turns when the ban announcement finally happens. If the One Ring is hopefully finally gone, and we can be freed from this hellish hellscape of the One Ring. I can't wait for that moment. Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you very much, Jack, both of you, for coming on.
Thanks,
Sam
guys.
Being the expert of our Blue Belcher deck, and Jack being my honorary
idiot in the corner.
He's our energy expert that I brought on in case there was any insights. And instead, we just listened to Sam yap for about an hour and a half or something.
Okay, I'm gonna go now. I think that's enough for me.
No, love you, Sam. Thank you very much for being on here with us, and take care to everyone. Hope you had a nice weekend yourselves, and hope you enjoyed this episode of Battle Chads. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you like about the show, the episode, and any questions for Sam. I'm sure that I'll be able to relay some of them for you guys. Take care, guys. Have a good one.